What do you do, good people? You know what time it is. It's that time when we just speak our mind, man. I like this cup, bro. Look at this cup. It says, have a cup of positive tea. I concur. Yeah. I like to stay with a whole spoon, bro. I don't do that teaspoon stuff. But anyway, you know what time it is. It's that time when we speak about books, and nothing else but books. Today we're going to talk about another a book on Egypt. I've been doing a lot of research because I am going to be attending an event or a lecture by Mkhulu Ntsigisa that is going to be happening here in Khutsong. An organization called the Great Empire Kemet is organizing and is responsible for organizing this event. Me as a knowledge, should I say connoisseur, aficionado, I'm only looking for the truth. I'm only looking for facts. I'm only looking for what works, right? That's just me. And that's why I read. I don't read necessarily for fun. I don't read. I'm not a book lover, whatever. I read for a purpose. I read because I really want to find the truth. And another thing about reading, well, sometimes I do read for fun. It's not always that but most importantly, I'm reading because I really need to find solutions for my own problems and for the problems of my community and my immediate family. So I'm reading this book by, on Egypt, which was shared on the one about Mkhulu, our WhatsApp group, also known as the Great Empire Kemet, which is, widely known by its leader, Mkhulu Ntsigisa, like I said, who's going to be coming to give us a lecture in Khutsong. So in this book, the book is titled, what is the book? The Sacred Magic of Egypt by Rosemary Clark. The last book I was reviewing was called Stolen Legacy by George James, who happens to be a PhD scholar at Arkansas University. The book I'm reading this time, or that I've read this time, is titled "The Sacred Magic of Egypt" by Rosemary Clark. So Rosemary Clark, when I do her a bit of background check, happens to be a school teacher. I don't know what sparked her interest. I didn't really read a whole biography on her. I only read a little bio, just a small description of who she was, just to find out exactly what she majors in and what's her field of study. And it seems like she was more interested in Egypt, just from a love's point of view, not necessarily as an Egyptologist. I would have loved to read an Egyptologist, writing a book like Egypt, because I guess they are doing more in-depth study. But just take a sip. So, let me just hold it with me. It just helps me think. So, I think, or I feel like the book itself, and this is just my take home, it does not necessarily mean this is what the book is about. It's just my perspective, my take home from the book is that the book felt more like a dictionary. It felt like an Egyptian dictionary of some sort, which actually lets you in on the archaeology, not the archaeology, but the architecture of Egypt, for instance, the ceremonies in Egypt, the calendars. It was like a dictionary of all those things, like the theurgies, which refers to the sacred. I think it speaks to the sacred or the divine works. That's what theurgy means. And liturgy means, I think it's like a constitution, the order at which, things were done and why they were done in that manner. Why would they have to follow a calendar in a certain way and what. It speaks to that. That's the liturgy. And then Another thing was the ceremonies, like I said, the ceremonies, what was celebrated, weddings, funerals, what was done during those, events and, ceremonies. And and so on and so forth. And so that's my take home. It felt like a dictionary which was actually defining everything, not everything, not necessarily everything. I don't think she covered everything because I think there's still a lot. She's not an Egyptologist. She's just a lover of the Egyptian, I think, way of life and everything like that. And basically, maybe a historian, someone who likes history. So my take home was that the book felt like a dictionary. Like you were just reading through a lot of, what the symbology meant, for instance. Yeah, we all know, like, for instance, the Eye of Heru or Osiris, what it represents, stuff like that, what certain, symbols, meant, what was done, what was the architecture like, why it was set up that way type of thing, which is a lot of detail. For someone who likes Egypt and who wants to study Egypt in depth, I think that's the right book for you. For me, it was like, wow, this is too much. But what did interest me was how they founded their calendar and how it ended up aligning with the Saudi calendar. I think the Saudi calendar is that which we use today, which is referred to as the Gregorian calendar. So here's what's interesting about the Egyptian calendars and how they ended up there. There's only one part I'm not sure about, which, is the 40 minutes they touch on there. But most of the calendar is so profound, bro. Because, so they have the three calendars, like it's called the lunar, the solar, and the stellar. So lunar, as you can hear it, refers to the moon. Lunar eclipse, blah, 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 blah. Lunar. It speaks to the moon. It speaks to the thing, the full moon, new moon, all like the patterns of the moon and the behavior of the moon. I don't know if a moon has a behavior. I'm just trying to find a way to explain it to you. So the solar refers to the sun, as you know, solar panels, sun, solar. So solar refers to the sun's behavior and patterns, how the sun acts. The sun rises in the east, sets in the west, type of thing. That's like a characteristic of a solar. And then the last one is the stellar, which refers to the stars. The stellar refers to the behavior of the stars. So the stars, how the stars were showing up. For instance, we know of the North Star, right? The Northern Star, according to Shakespeare, which is also known as the Sirius Star, according to the book. And also we know of the Orion constellation from the book. So here's what's interesting, right? Instead of the solar and the lunar, because the solar and the lunar actually did give a lot of understanding as far as the days and the weeks, right? But the constellations, the stars, that's where I think we found out the 365 days. So unlike the Gregorian calendar, the Egyptian calendar had weeks of 10 days. So instead of like the typical 7 days that we know in the Gregorian calendar, they had 10 days to form a week, as opposed to 7 days to form a week as we know it today. So a week was 10 days, and they had 3 weeks to form a month. So a month had 3 weeks, as opposed to the 4 week, that we know today. So they only had 3 weeks, and those weeks were stretching, up to 10 days. And so the 10 is also the number of the decans. The decans actually happens to be, I think, the cycles of the stars, how the stars appeared, and which, after every 10 days they would see the stars from the constellation of Orion, which consisted of at least about, I think, 36 stars. But you wouldn't normally see all 36 stars. You would normally see like 18, after a 10-day period. And so those 18, when you multiply them by 2, because you would see 18 only at night, right? But then they believe that there were also the other 18 that you see during the day. But then because they didn't have the telescopes, I believe, those stars were hidden by the night, were blocked by the sun's illumination, so you couldn't see the stars, during the day. But then if you take the 18 stars that you see at night and the 18 stars that you see during the day and you multiply them, then you have 36 stars. But like, because I get it now, it's night and day, so it's like 2. So now when you multiply those 18 stars by 2, then you have 36 stars. And if you multiply the 36 stars by 10 days, then you have 360 degrees, which is like a cycle, right? Like, because in mathematics, a revolution is also called a cycle, or a circle, a complete circle. So every circle is 360 degrees according to mathematics. So if you take those 10 days and you split them, right, then you have 360 days. Now the 5 days, right, those were, I think, days that were dedicated to, to the Ta, which I think, and the Sa is the quintessential energy. I don't know what the Ta is, guys. The and I think the Kawu, like those days, those refer to the fire, the fire energy, or the sun energy, the water energy, the air, which is the air, and then the earth, and then the 5th one was the quintessential. So the 5 days was dedicated to these elements, and then that's how they ended up with 365 days. And then they later explain it, into the leap year type thing, where like you have like a point something there. But that's what's interesting. Now, I don't know how they got to the 40 minutes, but what they did was they took the 40 minutes and they would multiply the 40 minutes by, I believe, the 18. And if you multiply 18 times 40 minutes, let me just quickly double check here. It's 40 times 18. Then you ended up with 720. So the 720 represented, you ended up with 720 minutes. So if you take the 720 minutes and you divide them by 60 minutes, 60 minutes, because 60 minutes is actually equals to an hour, then you have like 12 hours. So if you divide the 720 minutes divided by 60 minutes, then you have what? 12 hours. So the 12 hours represent the part, the half of the solar half, and the other 12 hours represents, the lunar half, which means the night and the day. So if you multiply the 12 hours by 2, then you have 24 hours, which gives you a day. And that's how they came up with the calendar. So now the calendar had to align with the solar calendar, because then the lunar calendar and the solar calendar are very difficult. They're not practical, but because we don't know, I don't know how they, they say it's very complicated to study or to live by the solar, and therefore what they resorted to was to create a solar calendar, which is what we call today, I think, the Gregorian calendar, which has, the days, 7 days and blah, 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 blah. But then I think the Greeks are the ones that interfered with the solar calendar, and then they, developed it into what we know it is today. But then there are other things like the Neter, which are the gods of Egypt. So all the gods, speak to the months, right? But at the same time, they speak to the seasonal changes. For instance, you have the age of Asar, which we are in today, which is the spring equinox in the southern hemisphere, because the sea, it's not the same. So for instance, spring in Egypt is around April, I think. Yes, around April, March day. In the winter, for instance, our summer is in December, towards January and February. Their summer, in December in Egypt, it's cold, because it's the northern hemisphere. Hence the Christmas day being celebrated and everything in the northern hemisphere. And we see snow and we have Santa Clauses and everything like that. Say the concept of Santa Claus during the spring season is a total hijacking of the mind of the southern hemisphere people who believe in Santa Claus. But I'm not trying to ruin your childhood or anything like that. I'm not that type of person. You can celebrate whatever you celebrate, however you celebrate it. It has nothing to do with me. But that was what stood out for me. But see, the Natter, right? Every month, as we know it, they also had 12 gods, right? From Asa up to, I think, Osat or Set. And all the months have their own meaning. For instance, we are in the month of Asa, which means spring, where now it's like we are acknowledging the beginning or the rebirth, of the of life and renewal and everything like that. It symbolizes that. So we are in the age of Asa, which symbolizes rebirth, and everything like that, and so on and so forth. Because next month is the age of Taurus, or what we now call Het Her, what they call Het Her, and that's where nourishment and the mating season type of thing is happening, marriages, all the good stuff. So that's my take home. There was a lot of spiritual attachments to the days, the weeks, the months, and so on and so forth. So, but for you to even understand what every month or what every god represented, for instance, there's a book here that I'm going to read. It's not necessarily a book, but it's a calendar of prayers that was borrowed to me by Mkhulu from the Great Empire of Kemet. He's one of the members, and so he borrowed me this calendar. This is what they used to pray, and I saw a lot of similarities between this calendar and the other calendars, because there were, like, for instance, certain rituals that you had to do during certain months. For instance, if you look at this book right here, there is a prayer here that you have to recite at least I think 3 times during these times, some at 6 a.m., at 12 noon, 6 p.m., and at 12 at night. So you had to recite these things like at least 4 times a day, in a day. So yeah, that it speaks to that. What do I take home though? This is ritual, and I've always lived by this other saying from Lao Tzu. Is it Lao Tzu? No, Lao Tzu is the one who wrote the other one. I'm speaking about Sun Tzu. No, Lao Tzu is actually not the one who wrote the Tao Te Ching, which is the way of virtue, which is a Chinese text, and yeah, it was written around 500 BC as well. It's a very ancient book. I got it from Khutsong. You see, you must watch the friends you keep. These people, man, they will expose you to some stuff, and so yeah, the Tao Te Ching says something, man. There's a line that has always stuck with me, and it says, "Ritual is the husk of true faith, the beginning of chaos." As much as the Egyptians, virtues and principles were very profound in that they followed the way of nature and they imitated nature, or they related to nature strongly because they studied nature. Is that how does me praying like this going to nourish me? Is it going to change my circumstances? And a lot of people will say, oh, but no, why are you bringing circumstances of material success into this conversation? Because it's about your spiritual well-being. I do believe that I have to be a spiritual individual, and I am a spiritual individual to an extent. But what I do find difficult is these principles are mainly for people who are scholars of these words and texts, and those who believe and who walk and who march in such movements. For a person like myself, who is only trying to find the truth and who's only trying to find or to understanding and and wisdom, it becomes difficult for me to perform rituals, or to be consistent with these rituals. I know that you don't have to be a perfect person, but then it feels like a lot. Because I was reading a book called The Greatest Salesman together with Khosi, and we tried, to do the ritual that Ojimandino actually suggests in the book, that you read, certain literature for 3 times a day. And my question is, was this really done because it was really magically powerful, that it can bring miracles and everything like that? Or was it done because it had to enforce discipline? Because I do believe that discipline can, in a way, bring all the good stuff. And therefore, I wonder if it's realistic for us to live like the Egyptians of, 3,500 to 4,000 BC, and when we live in 2003. Wouldn't that be a bit backward? Is it possible that we can, as we progress and as we learn from the other Egyptians, that we can develop new rituals that will meet the time, that will actually be of the time? Yes, with giving acknowledgement to, the ancient gods, right? And there's a lot of things that I'm skeptical about. For instance, these are the months, right, as you know them. Like I told you that, like, next month we go into the month of Het, right? But according to the Egyptian calendar, on the 23rd of this month, we are going to be entering the month of Het, which is October. You understand? You see what I'm saying? But then on the 23rd of September, you will already be in October, according to this calendar. Like, for instance, Perechong is January it's basically the month of, where is January here? According to this book, January is Heru, right? So it means January is Heru, and that's Perechong in Sesotho. What I'm trying to ask you is, how are these principles not embedded in our cultural doctrines, or in our especially the cultural doctrines of the Southern Hemisphere? I do understand that the great empire of Kemet always visits in Zaloyelanga, which is called the Adam's calendar, out in, what is this place, Mpumalanga, every now and then, right? But then we don't have a firm grip of these doctrines in our cultures, yet we descended from the Egyptians, according to to some sources, that Egypt was a black people, black land, basically. Yes, we find, for instance, in the last book I read, Dr. George actually points out that the Greeks referred to the Egyptians as the black, and that's why they call them, I think they had a name for them, and that name it appears in old Greek text, referring to the people of Egypt as black people. That we came, and other people actually say we migrated from from North Africa coming down. Like, for instance, you find elements of Xhosa in places like Kenya and Senegal and whatnot. Like, you will hear like the tongues are slightly similar, or I think it's called the vowels. I'm not really sure. Is that, how do we end up here, bro? And we forgot all of that stuff, because I think in Perechong we were supposed to have certain prayers that we do for Perechong. Hlakola, Hlakubele, Misa, Poop, Jani, Pupu, Pato, Motsianong, Luetzi, I think Purumong. Is it Purumong? Purumwane, not Purumwa. Purumo is actually a place in town. Purumwane, and then it's Sitwe, which is refers to December. These are all the months of the year in Sesotho, right? So, in conclusion, is that there's so much that we need to learn as people, But I also find that there's so many similarities between the cultures, whether it's of ancient times or of modern times. I do think we still do the rituals. It's just that we don't do them up to par. I mean, maybe we don't do the same. We don't do the same invocations. A lot of our people, for instance, during ceremonies like weddings, mekete, which is like Thanksgiving in a way, we do summon or recite invocations. Some of them we do like clan names, but it's not just clan names. We actually summon, the ancestral spirit to come and be within us, or be amongst us as we celebrate that day. And maybe we don't refer to them as Sa or the quintessential force, but we do refer to them or to God as Amata or Ramasedi or Tlatlamacholo in Sesotho. I think it's Amata or I don't know. I'm not sure if it's Amata or Amata, but I think it's Amata. And so there's so many similarities. The rituals are the same, different here and there. Maybe not as intense and as deep as they were back then, Maybe because of the time, Maybe because of the system that we are living in. Remember, that was an Egyptian civilization, and therefore the system was different from the Babylonian system that we are dwelling in right now. And when I was referred to it in Babylon, I'm not referring to it in a negative way or calling it something else. I'm just saying that in a capitalistic system that is ruled by the West, we are, after all, living in those times, and therefore the rituals will be slightly tweaked to accommodate the people of this time, because this is 2023. This is not 4,000, 3,000, or 3,500 BC, bro. There are things that we can take from the ancient Egyptians or the ancient people, but there will be a lot of it that is going to be added, from us, because it has to speak to us. It has to, be directed to us. And that's my take, is that we cannot be focusing on spirituality that much. Not to say that, it's not an important aspect of our life. I do believe that it is. But then we cannot want to dictate how people communicate to the source or to God. Some people go to temples like churches, and other people go to shrines. Other people build their own shrines. Other people burn candles. Other people burn incense. Other people go to trees. Other people, we all have different ways of communicating with the source. And I think that's the most important thing. A lot of us like to demonize. And in demonizing, what has to happen is that we don't understand the individual's experience with that spiritual practice. And therefore, sometimes you say, oh, you speak into the devil's, system of praying. But is it? Is it really the system itself, or is it the individual's intention? I think these are some of the things that we need to iron out. What is the intention? For instance, if I speak to a deity, for instance, if I speak to Buddha or Jesus, or if I call on them, as I call on them, is my heart really calling on the devil? Is the spell really directed at, say, my enslavement? Or is the spell really directed at what needs to be done? I do think that these rituals were very important as far as practice is concerned. It was all about discipline, enforcing discipline and actually fostering discipline. And I do believe that African people need a connection with the spiritual realm, because it will connect them to their discipline, and they will be more disciplined, and with discipline you can accomplish a lot more. And that's my take home. Understand? Is that we need to embrace every black person, regardless of what they believe in, because then what will happen is we will be able to understand, okay, this is how this person, communicates with the source and God, and that's fine, because it might be the only thing that's keeping them alive, and that's what something that's something that we need to take into consideration. This might be the only thing that's keeping them alive. For instance, an addict that just believes in Jesus Christ because they just left maybe cocaine, or they just been addicted to crystal meth. And you're gonna come and you're gonna blow all that away by telling them that that's not real, when they are holding on to this with their lives. You can basically, destroy someone's life by just saying, oh, you are believing in a fake, fictitious character. I do believe that there's a lot of truth to what the Egyptians were doing. And it was done with intention, and intention is I think is the big word here. What was the intention? Was it to ground the people? Was it to bring healing? And if your spiritual practice is trying to bring those things, then what is wrong with it? Regardless of what you call it, regardless of what you code it as. As long as it's, you're trying to bring good out of a person, then what's wrong with it? Perhaps I've lost my mind. Perhaps I don't know anymore, because I really don't. That's why I'm reading these books, trying to find out exactly how we can better ourselves. But I do believe that religion is there to foster discipline. And yeah, we do need discipline as a people to achieve things. I do think that we need to learn corporate administration, or, maybe military administration. We need to learn practical things that are going to help us really overcome in the physical. And in order for us to overcome in the physical, we have to overcome in the spiritual, which is the discipline, the internal work, and that will require us to believe in something beyond us. And that's where the quintessential force of the Egyptian comes in. And therefore, that's me. That's my take home from the whole experience. I'm still going to have a conversation with Tamaku very soon about this. And I'm hoping that he will enlighten me a little bit more about this practice, or his practice within the great empire of Kemet. And so yeah, I'm sorry I got this this video to be this long. It's just that this is just too much. But then, like I was just saying that everybody needs to love, honor each other, regardless of what you believe in. You don't have to demonize another person's belief system, whatnot. We need to focus on, like I said, the practical mechanisms of actually getting to the root and the source of our problems economically, because I do think in order for us to have a proper spiritual compass, we are going to have to take care of the essentials. And it sounds like the Egyptians had that on lock, because they knew their science well, because they knew when the Nile was gonna be inundated. They knew exactly how when to plant and everything. So the science was very important. And even when you read the Stolen Legacy book by Dr. George, is that you find that the neophytes had to be scientific. They had to know mathematics. And I mean, I already spoke about the Dickens and how they actually constructed time, and that's very profound. That's a science. That's not something that's spiritual. Then how even the science of building the pyramids, science of carving those statues, it's all science. You have to master science, and I think that's where all enlightenment will come from the discipline. From the discipline, we need to learn how to be disciplined, and that's my take home. So that they were disciplined, and that's where we need to get to. And yeah, but if you want to read, you can still go read and learn. And yeah, this is just my take home. So with that said, I will leave it here, man. Peace and love, 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 peace and love. I will.